Welcome back to the CMY Digital Stories. My name's Abdul, and today we'll be interviewing Ayesha. Ayesha has grown up in Toronto as a Canadian Muslim youth, and on this interview, she shares with us her experiences, the challenges she sees facing Muslim youth, and the path forward for a more inclusive and diverse Canada. Thank you, Ayesha, for coming on today on today's CMY Digital Stories.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
And can you just give us a little bit of an intro about yourself? Who are you?
So my name is Ayesha. I'm Pakistani Canadian, and of course I'm Muslim. I'm going into my fourth year as a social work student at York University, and then I'm minoring in children, childhood, and youth.
Okay, awesome. And can you tell us how you kind of got involved or how you kind of learned about the Canadian Muslim Youth Project?
So um, it was through the professor running I think one of the people running the program, and then I was like contacted through email, like, oh, do you want to participate in this research project? And there was a series of interviews and like research groups, and then I was open to participating because I've never done anything like this before, and I think it would be cool to have different perspectives of different Canadians across Canada, like not just in Calgary. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So to kind of, get us started, it's a bit of a loaded question, but what does it mean to be a Canadian Muslim?
I think that's a very broad question. um Being a Canadian Muslim means I'm a Muslim person living in Canada and trying my best to, at least to me, trying my best to stay connected to my faith while interacting with so many people, most people every day that are not Muslim. So I think finding a balance between staying connected to my faith but also not losing it.
Mm-hmm. And how do you do that? How do you go about trying to stay connected while being in a university that's mainly non-Muslim, being in a country that's mainly non-Muslim? How do you stay connected to that Muslim identity?
The main thing, of course, is like my 5 daily prayers, because that's like a constant reminder I'm Muslim. And I think Muslim people in Canada, we have to make that extra effort to, I guess, just fit in, and either by like finding people that we have similarities with, like other Muslims, if you're lucky enough to, I guess, encounter them, because I know in parts of Canada there's not that many Muslim people. But for me, I guess I seek out other Muslim people that I can kind of confide in.
Canadian Muslim youth, they have their own set of challenges. They have their own set of hurdles that they kind of have to work through, especially, if they were born and raised in a place like Canada. What do you think some of those challenges are? What are some of those challenges that Canadian Muslim youth face?
When it comes to staying connected to your faith, more specifically, I know for young people, there's a lot of stuff that other people our age are doing, like maybe getting into certain relationships or getting into certain things that are considered like not allowed in our religion. So I think that's a huge one, especially for people in university, because once you move away from your home, you get this kind of new freedom that you never had before. And a lot of them, like, I don't blame them for thinking this way, of course, because it's your first time having this kind of freedom, so you want to explore new things that you've never had a chance to before. So I think that definitely affects the faith of a lot of Muslim Canadian youth, for sure. Because you also, when you get to university, you want to get to know so many people, and that the only way to kind of do that is through engaging in things that we're not supposed to.
What is the path forward for these Canadian Muslim youth who maybe are put in uncomfortable situations? How do they, kind of stay true to their belief systems?
Again, making the effort to make maybe look for the people that you can get something out of and they can get something out of you, like a positive relationship. I think I know a lot of universities, they have MSA, Muslim Student Association, and stuff like that. So if someone's making the effort to stay connected to their faith, maybe joining programs like that, and then also in your day-to-day life doing things that are expected of Muslims, like just practicing being the religion itself and being a kind-hearted person, stuff like that. I think that would be a constant reminder of your faith and help you at least a little bit staying away from certain things.
If, if you could only use one word, how would you describe the current state of the Canadian Muslim youth community?
One word. Um,
In one word.
I don't want this to sound because that's generalizing like a whole group of people. And I
Of
know there's
course.
there's people that are very strong in their faith that are my age and some that are really struggling. So I would say maybe I think but something that one word that fits everyone might be confused.
Okay, so explain that a little bit more.
So that can apply to many different Muslim youth because it can be for the people that really are really struggling with their faith because they're definitely confused about what they should do. And then also the ones that are very practicing of their faith, they're confused because they might want to find a way to get more involved with I guess their community that's not related to like the Muslim population. So they're confused how to maybe break into that sort of thing. So everyone's just kind of trying to find their own individual place.
That kind of reminds me of a point that was in a previous interview that we did when I asked the person, like we were talking about, what does it mean to be a Canadian, and they were saying the that being Canadian means to not necessarily be any individual thing, right? That diversity is actually what being Canadian is, right? And that kind of reminds me a little bit about the point you just made about that confusion, right? About, well, there isn't, it's a bit of a mess, right? It's like a jumble of a whole bunch of different things, and that's kind of the eternal struggle of identity that we're faced with, right?
Yeah.
What role do you think media has in influencing Muslim youth identity, and influencing the way that the Muslim community acts in Canada?
I would say the media's portrayal of Muslim people is not the greatest, and that impacts us a lot because, for one, it impacts the way non Muslim people view us. It either makes us, like, especially Muslim women, it makes people think, oh, they're oppressed. That's been a common kind of notion that people have. And then, um, like, we don't want to be Muslim. We want to do certain things that people here in Canada are doing, and then that affects the Muslim people themselves because when people interact with us, they sometimes pity us, and that makes it hard to even just make friends with people.
What do you think that we as a community or a greater Canadian society can do to influence this?
I think that whenever a show comes out where there is not a good representation of Muslims, we need to do more in order to express our dislike for it because I think that would get out there to the non-Muslim people who also agree with us that this isn't right representation. And then maybe eventually, when there is a show, when there are shows that have Muslims, they would actually have multiple Muslim people in their room when creating the show so that you know that it's accurate representation. Because I know right now, when there is a Muslim character in a show, there's no Muslim writers in the room. They're just going based off like Google and what they already know. So it's always inaccurate, or it can be accurate, but the portrayal is always a Muslim person who basically they don't want to be Muslim, which I'm sure that is something that is the experience of some people. But when that's the only story being told, that says something to the non-Muslim people, and it's not great.
Would you agree with the statement that many Canadian Muslim youth have these hybrid identities where inside their home they're a completely different person than at school, than in their mosque, than with their friends, etc., etc.?
Yeah, definitely.
And why do you feel that many Canadian Muslim youth are more inclined to having all these different identities rather than just kind of having a blend of them and calling it one identity?
For example, within your home, you want to um be the best of the best for your parents. So maybe you're very good within your home, and like you follow whatever they say, and then around your friends, say if your friend group is like a mix of Muslim and non-Muslim people, you want your non-Muslim friends to be able to relate to you as well. So you have to put your Muslim identity to the side, where and then you bring out more of your just Canadian identity to be able to actually stay friends with them, because maybe, yeah, they have certain hobbies or something that as a Muslim, I guess you wouldn't particularly be a part of. And then when it comes to like at the mosque, of course, even more so you bring out your Islamic identity, and like um just to kind of, I guess, if you have friends at the mosque or people that you know at the mosque, you want them to think greatly of you. So of course you act um the best for them as well. So it's just, again, like trying to find your place. But because we have so many different groups of people that we interact with on a daily basis, you kind of can't, at least to me, it's hard to have one identity, because you always want to hold these relationships with these different groups of people. And if you have one identity, that might not fit with all these different groups.
Now, one final question for you. If you could go back, you know, 15 years and give some advice to young Aisha who's just growing up in Canada, what advice would you give her as she faces the challenge of being a Canadian Muslim youth in the next coming years?
I would say be proud of who you are, because when I was younger, I guess I maybe put my identity to the back for a majority of the situations I was in, even though I think it could have been great if I proudly said to people I'm a Muslim girl, because then eventually that would help strengthen my faith even more. Because if you're claiming it and you're proud of it, then even within your home, it makes you want to engage in the faith more.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today on the CMY Digital Stories, and we appreciate hearing your perspective.
Thank you for having me.